The Brexit minister. Now, you haven't actually been in the government for that many weeks. Some would say it's quite ambitious to put yourself up to be Prime Minister on the basis of that apprenticeship.
Yeah. Well, I will answer the implied question then. If you look at global politics, there is a pattern emerging, and voters all across the globe in the elections over the last few years have been rejecting politicians that have been imposed for years and years and years and come across as a little bit old-fashioned and stale, and they have been voting for outsiders who can show a clean pair of heels and a new approach, who can look different and sound different and offer something new. And I think I can do that for the Conservative Party in the country.
If you look at a Macron, his was all about trying to make the French state more competitive. You can argue how successful he's been at that, but nonetheless, that was his message. In the case of Trump, it was attacking what he thought of or he described as the establishment. So what's your big idea?
Well, the first idea, and I think Mark makes a very valid point, and actually in the same way, Ben probably won't thank me for saying this, but Ben's also making a point that at the moment the whole debate is dominated by Brexit. We've got to get that off the table before we can have a credible conversation about anything else. So the first thing we've got to do is deliver Brexit. We've got to have a plan to do that.
So do you differ from Jeremy? Can I just ask you quickly on that? Do you differ from... Jeremy has basically said what matters is getting the right deal, and he's plainly not wedded to October the 31st because he thinks if you are wedded to October the 31st, you end up with a suicidal general election.
Delay is the worst thing.
So you are totally committed to getting the UK out on the 31st of October, whatever it takes.
Delay brings indecision. The longer we've got to decide, the less decisive we are, and we've got to get real. We've got to make the tough decisions. We've got to make it soon. I was talking to business people this evening before I came here. This delay is killing them. They want it resolved. They are quite happy for us to leave the European Union. And these are people who voted for Remain. They reconciled themselves to the fact we're leaving the European Union.
A lot of them are scared of a no deal. So I'm going to make a tough decision now because
they would be willing to have no deal. It's not what they would like.
Plenty more to talk about, but I am being told, because I work for ITV, we've got adverts to go to, so don't go away. More from James. Some amazing stats from Anushka in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. James Cleverly is still with me, but first, Anushka.
Thank you, Robert. I want to talk about those European election results. Chris Hanratty, who is kind of a constituency data guru, has done some exclusive research for Peston. He's looked at how every individual seat in England, Scotland and Wales voted to see what would have happened if it had been a first-past-the-post election. So let me show you this. This is Parliament as it is at the moment, the Tories, Labour, SNP and the other parties. Now, before I show you this, caveat, European elections are not the same as general elections. Turnout is much lower. People use them to protest. Also, we know the Brexit Party did very well in local authorities, but still, are you ready for this? This is what would have happened. That is the number of seats in which the Brexit Party came first. 414. In second place, the Lib Dems on 76, Labour on 67. The SNP, Plaid and the Greens were all up. But look at this, the Tories, first in just one constituency. Now, for this, Chris Hanratty, you are our...
Geek of the Week.
Geek of the Week, badge in the post. Now, the big question is, how differently will people vote in a general election? Lord Ashcroft has done some polling over the weekend. It looks complicated, but it's quite simple, really. If you look at this blue bit across the top, that is the Brexit Party, 32% in the Europeans, goes to 18% in the general election, same as the Conservatives, just behind Labour. Now, it's difficult to say what that would mean in terms of seats, but I can tell you that when UKIP got 13% in 2015, almost 4 million votes, they came second in 120 seats. But first, the only result that matters under our system in just one. Our two main parties can thank their lucky stars they have first past the post. Robert.
I think, though, on that analysis by Ashcroft, first past the post doesn't yield quite such an extraordinary extreme result as we had in that earlier election. But, I mean, what that does show, it seems to me, James, is the dominance of the two major parties is under threat like at no time in our life. I mean, you were asked in the break, when did you last cry? I think you must be fighting back the tears now looking at those figures.
Well, look, the simple truth of the matter is that we have got to deliver Brexit. The big takeaway from that for me
do you think the Tories can bounce back? I mean, that shows a collapse of trust.
I do. I think both major political parties, both Labour and the Conservatives, have got a serious issue that we've got to deal with. Ours is simple. It's not easy to, communicate those or translate those figures into first past the post, etc. All those caveats are true. But the challenge that we've got is clear, and that is to deliver Brexit, because that's the promise that we've made. And until we do that, we can't really credibly talk about anything else. Labour's problem is actually more difficult because their vote was split. Half of their voter base wanted Brexit delivered, half of their voter base wants Brexit stopped. So whichever way they jump, they're in trouble. But that's their problem, not ours. As leader of the Conservative Party, what I would seek to do is make sure we get Brexit delivered. And I've got a plan for doing that. If you look at paragraph 2 of the EU's Task Force 50 letter of the 11th of March, it makes it explicitly clear that alternative arrangements can be used to unlock the backstop. And the backstop is where the problem is with regard to withdrawal agreement. If we can get that over the line, we can thrash out a deal. And if we can't do that, then we have got to be prepared to leave the European Union, as promised, on the 29th of March. And I'm the no-deal Brexit minister. It's my job to make sure we're ready to do so, and we will be able to do so.
I'm aware of that. Now, I want to put a question to you that I put to Jeremy Hunt. He said his masters at his school would have said that he wanted to be Prime Minister from the time he was a teenager. How long have you known you wanted this job?
Certainly not since I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be first a professional artist. That was obviously not going to work out. I joined the army when I first
Were you always
school.
a Tory?
I think I probably was, actually. I mean,
where did
I
that
grew
come
up
from?
Well, so I had a father who was a small business owner, an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I had a mother who was a midwife in Lewisham Hospital. So I've seen the importance of public services through my mother's work, and I've seen how you pay for them through my father's work. I was just about old enough to remember the winter of discontent, and I was just about old enough to remember the Thatcher government in the late 70s and early 80s sort out the economic collapse that we inherited from Labour. There's a pattern emerging, you might notice.
Indeed. I read an interesting interview with you in which you said that being raised in a mixed-race household wasn't the easiest experience, but you used the word that you were teased, which is, it seems an odd word. Was it not more painful than that?
The word that I would have used at the time, and therefore the word that I used when I wrote about that, was to be teased. Bullying was a different thing. Bullying was.
But did you experience racism?
Yeah. And you do. I was a mixed-race kid. Even in South East London at the time, that was still quite a rarity. There was teasing. I don't think there was the kind of aggression or nastiness that you would think if you used the word bullying. But there was phraseology that was used that would turn people's hair white in this day and age that was in common usage. And it was used in the playground, and it was used by people that I would regard at the time, and I would still regard now, as friends. It was just the way things were at the time. It wasn't right. Things have got better, and I'm really proud.
Do you feel as though you've been held back by prejudice?
No, of course not. I mean, look, I'm a minister in the government. I've been deputy chairman of the Conservative Party.
So you've not encountered the kind of prejudice which has prevented you from doing the things you want to do?
I have encountered prejudice. It hasn't stopped me.
The Labour Party is confronting an incredibly embarrassing investigation into the way it's dealt with anti-Semitism. There has been a submission also to the Equalities Commission about Islamophobia in the Tory party.
Well, look, all mass participation movements will have people within them that say and do wrong and inappropriate things. That is sad but inevitable. The real test is how the leadership of those organisations deal with it. I was deputy chairman of the Conservative Party. We made it very, very clear. We had very clear and widely disseminated guidelines saying this is unacceptable. Islamophobia, other forms of religious bigotry, racial hatred.
Are you confident the EHRC won't investigate your party?
I don't know whether they will or they won't, but I know for a fact that we took decisive action whenever and wherever these cases were brought to our attention, and it turned out that they were actually members of our party, because there have been a lot of allegations that upon investigation we discovered they weren't members of our party. This isn't easy. It's a very sensitive matter. My party takes it incredibly seriously and will continue to do so, I have no doubt.
It's a joy to have you with us. I'm afraid we're out of time. I'm sorry.